I mean, we love those guys down there, but why don't we get together as North Texas and see if we can get the same angel investment numbers in 2026 than they do in Austin? Because we know now. I mean, we should. I mean, we certainly got more money up here than they do in Austin, but yet we're significantly behind on angel investment. So let's focus on beating Austin, and it's going to make Austin better. It's going to make us better, and then maybe one day we'll team together and try and beat Boston. But right now, the infighting here, we don't need any of it. Now, look, they're all about ROI, and they should be all about ROI. But they also want to give back to the community. 35-minute drive, get you home for dinner. Come on, it's not a bad deal. And the business community really, for the first time, is really understanding the value of supporting entrepreneurs and angel networks. You want to go far, you go as a group. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself.
Welcome to The Diligent Observer, where we help angel investors see what most miss. I'm your host, Andrew, and every week we explore what works, what doesn't, and why through conversations with experienced startup investors and operators. My guest today is Bill Chinn, CEO of the Dallas Entrepreneurship Center, a nonprofit focused on supporting entrepreneurs across the Dallas-Fort Worth ecosystem. In this episode, we explore how Fort Worth is emerging as a major startup hub, discuss the surprising regional growth in healthcare and biotech investment through initiatives like Pegasus Park, and hear Bill's candid take on the role that angel investors play in filling critical funding gaps for underserved entrepreneurs. I hope you enjoy learning from Bill as much as I did. Bill, thank you for being with me today.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Bill, you are standing in the middle of what is quickly becoming one of the most active entrepreneurship ecosystems in the country here in DFW. And so thrilled to be able to sit down and hear your take in the midst of DFW Startup Week, the 10th anniversary. I mean, just so much energy here in the room this week. I'd love to hear as a starting point, what are some of the things that you're really excited about right now?
Well, it's hard not to be excited about this event, right? So as you mentioned, 10th annual, this is the biggest one. I mean, so we're on track to have a record-setting year here. And I think it just underlines.
What's our guest count? To say big, what do you mean when you say this is the biggest ever?
Well, so we're defining it. We're capetitive, right? We're all capitalists right here. So Denver has always had the biggest startup week. Now,
Yep.
Startup Weeks, it's nationally regulated. So there's a way of kind of counting participants that's pretty well scripted. And Denver always beats us, right? And, obviously I'm very biased here, but I think, we go first. So we tell Denver, here's our number. Can you beat that? And they're like, yeah, we can beat that. I wish it was reversed, right? It would just feel easier to get to the number if we know what they do. But they do a great job. Brad Feld, he's just an incredible ecosystem builder. He does that, out of Boulder. But it's sort of Denver, Boulder. So again, I mean, our focus is really clear. We'd like to be number one. I mean, those are our friends and they've helped us a great deal. But yeah, we want to beat them.
And so where are you seeing some of the most exciting activity? Like, what are the things that are happening here locally that maybe most people don't see or behind the scenes?
Yeah, look at me. Obviously Dallas just being such a financial capital and just, a long track record of really supporting entrepreneurs. That gets a lot of press. But I think the new player in town is Fort Worth. I mean, this is the fastest growing major metro market in America. They got ranked last year, number 7 best place to start a company. And they're really putting a lot of effort into it. So it's fun to watch DFW work a little closer together. And so that's something that's kind of new. And, Fort Worth, we have locations in Dallas and Fort Worth, and we've had a location in Fort Worth for quite some time, but we've really outgrown it. So we're moving to a bigger location on September 10th. But the support we're seeing in Fort Worth is kind of unprecedented. The mayor's coming out to open that new center. And the business community really, for the first time, is really understanding the value of supporting entrepreneurs and angel networks. And, they realize it's a long horizon for them, but it's worth getting involved earlier. So that's an exciting new development.
Well, I want to ask more about what's happening, but you mentioned something that ecosystem builders are excited about and see the value in angel investors and in entrepreneurship ecosystems. What are some of the main calculus that's going on behind the scenes as you're thinking about where to allocate resources, what organizations to support, right? Angel investors, which is the primary composition of our audience, very small percentage of the overall population. How are you thinking about activating that capital from an ecosystem level? What does the conversation look like, behind closed doors when there's a million projects, a million things to think about, a million pieces that are happening, like where does the angel investor fit in your?
The angel investors, I mean, there's a couple of ways to answer. I mean, first of all, angel investors obviously are a really important part of the pipeline and an early part of the pipeline. That becomes particularly important if you look at entrepreneurs from the southern sector. And for those of you outside it, southern sector of Dallas is kind of the undernourished, the underdeveloped part. And it's the same if so Fort Worth. It's the southern southwest part of Fort Worth. And the angels are so important because some of the friends and family money of those creative entrepreneurs, it's not there. So the angels come in a little bit early. And it's important they do because those are really viable businesses that have great futures. But if they don't get that early investment, I mean, we don't see those great ideas come to fruition. So the angels increasingly are kind of filling that gap, which is really exciting. And yeah, now look, they're all about ROI and they should be all about ROI, but they also want to give back to the community. And what shocks us is, they're focused on investment, but they're also super generous in terms of, judging pitch competitions in the southern sector of Dallas, mentoring organizations where the ROI is going to be, a decade away, but yet they're still doing it because they see it as, look, I used to be that person. And, and now I'm trying to find the right investment, but I'm also trying to give back to the community. So, we really love the angels because they're a little bit of mix of philanthropy. And sometimes I don't think they even like that title. They're like, no, we're capitalists.
We're here to make money.
Right.
We're not giving anything away.
Yeah, I'm like, you can do both, man. I mean, you can get thanked for making a lot of money. I mean, what's better than getting thanked for making a lot of money?
Well, it's fun to hear. I'm biased, right? This is all about helping angels grow. But I love hearing about the way that angels just contribute such a positive way to the ecosystem. However, these communities don't just form overnight, right? You don't just say, I want an angel network, and then it's there, and now you have 100 members, and it's super vibrant.
Sure.
There is a way to force it, but I think my observation has been the DFW ecosystem has really been a slow burn, and it's kind of matured slow and steady over the last several decades. I'm curious, as you have thought about this, what are some of the trends or things like behind the scenes, like the slow moving but intentional things that you and the DEC Network have done to help foster this robust ecosystem growth?
Yes, I mean, because we're a 501(c), we tend to come at it from a very collaborative point of view. And so we really encourage all the angels to get around the table. I mean, if we're not fully funding these deals, why are we not, really flexibly sharing this? And I think that's happening. I mean, just next week, I know HFIN out of TCU and Intan, North Texas Angel Network, and a couple of others, and I believe Cowtown out of Fort Worth, they're all getting together and they're having a joint session. And that's what we really encourage is, guys, let's get everyone around the table. Let's get the admin costs lower. Let's make sure that the entrepreneurs have a good experience and a consistent experience with the angels. Let's save them time. Why do they really need to come to 4 different meetings in the DFW area? Can we make it 2? And I think that everyone's life gets easier when everyone collaborates and people aren't trying to, look, I found a great deal. I'm trying to hoard it, but I'm not going to fully fund it. I mean, there's not a lot of logic in that. And so we're seeing a ton more collaboration, and us, along with a lot of great 501(c)(3)s, we can sit at the table and no one's sitting there thinking, well, how are you making money out of this? Because we're not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not our mission. And so we have enough credibility to say, hey, come on, guys, let's do this all together. Everyone wins when we work together, and it's working. I mean, they see the logic of that. We're seeing a lot more collaboration.
I feel like ecosystem building, ecosystem growth is just such an overwhelming topic. It's hard enough to evaluate one deal, right? Is this a good investment? But to think about all the moving parts, all the different stakeholders, all the pieces at play in building and shaping ecosystems, I mean, it's just overwhelming to me. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, kind of how you came into this seat, and what are some of the things that have really impacted you over the last 6-7 years in your current role?
Yeah, I'm really biased here, but I think 501(c)(3)s, the true nonprofits have a role to play in the ecosystem. Now, they can't lead everything because you really need this capitalist flavor, and you really need the culture of business to kind of take the forefront. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot of people to sit at the table. I mean, the universities have to be there, the ecosystem builders, the government has to be there, and really importantly, corporations have to be there. And so we see our role as kind of getting everyone around the table, not coming up with all the great ideas that make it a wonderful ecosystem, but just getting the right people in the right room. And then frankly, we get out of our league pretty quick because I mean, they're the great organizers and, titans of industry and have all the resources. And our role is to get them in a room consistently enough that they hit their deadlines and they stick to the plan. That's something that I think is happening a lot in DFW more so. I mean, we see our friends in Austin and particularly Silicon Valley. I mean, back in the 2000s, I was lucky enough to live out there and to watch how they all came together. If there was one way I would describe it, it was, a selflessness. I mean, they were almost back in those kind of heydays of Silicon Valley. Everyone was so busy. No one had time for politics. No one had time to worry much about credit. I mean, there were some exceptions to that, but it was just so fast moving that it was kind of like, you got to the end of your day and you laid your head on a pillow and you're like, did you worry about credit? I don't have time to worry about who got credit for. And tomorrow we're going to wake up. No one has time to worry about politics.
What do you think are some of the biggest slowdowns or biggest restraints on this flourishing ecosystem, right? You come to events like this and you feel it, but what are some of the things that you feel like really inhibit the growth of an ecosystem like this?
Yeah, I mean, so the personalities that tend to do really well in ecosystems, A-type, not a lot of patience. I mean, and all the good things that come with that, but all the bad things too. And you have to get everyone involved. Like, government is a great example. Not only do you have different strategy plans and philosophy changes you get in any organization, but then you have these elections come along and everything changes. So everyone sits there and says, like, the government's really tough to get to be consistent. And be a consistent partner. And you've got a bunch of captains of industry sitting around the table. They just don't want to wait for them to catch up. And I'm like, a little bit of patience is appropriate here because, they do bring a great perspective. They do bring a ton of resources and it's worth being patient and letting them catch up. And it's not because the folks who are doing that don't want to move faster or don't understand that the slowness is holding everyone back. They do, and they hate it. But at the end of the day, they're constrained. So just having a little empathy for their world and realizing if you move off without them, it's just really tried to say, but you want to go far, you go as a group. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. And, and it's managing those really typical personalities in the same room and just get them to kind of get to the same wavelength and a little, you're not going to change anyone's pace, but
easier said than done.
Yeah, right. No one's going to change their pace just for us. But we can maybe make them a little more patient and just a little more empathy for all the people around the table.
Yeah. So it sounds like kind of a key thing that can slow down growth is this misunderstanding or misaligned timelines, expectations. And just like any good marriage, right? Having good expectations, right? Expectations is help. What else would you say is tends to muck up the progress?
Well, I mean, and I go back to one of the themes. I mean, if you spend time worrying about who's going to get credit, I mean, you're having a bunch of meetings around politics and credit. I mean, those are meetings that you could have used to move the ball forward. And when things go well, there's usually plenty of credit to go around. And people are smart. I mean, they kind of know who did it, even if you're not yelling from the rooftops, "Hey, I did that, I did that." People usually figure it out in the long run. So any time wasted on that, it's just that's energy that could have been spent propelling the system forward.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so it all comes back to people, all comes back to relationships, good expectations. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about maybe some of the themes that you're seeing grow in ecosystem, particularly industry or sectors that are getting quite a bit of investment. Dallas, as you mentioned, has this, Dallas-Fort Worth more broadly has this perception, I think, across the ecosystem as the high finance space, right? We have the Texas Stock Exchange launching soon, right? Lots of innovation in the finance fintech space. What are some of the other categories or sectors that are thriving, growing, really accelerating here locally that most of us wouldn't think about?
Yeah, so biotech, healthcare. I mean, that's an area that's really, particularly in the last 3 to 5 years, is really blown up around here, and that's got really, really exciting. But I think this DFW market tends to be pretty broad, and that's a good thing. The focus is useful, but also that ability to kind of bring everyone into it and be able to have the flexibility of dealing with all these different ideas from all these different industries. But to answer your question, I would say definitely healthcare and biotech might be the thing that people will be surprised about in this very traditional financial market.
What are some of the markers for that? Like healthcare, biotech, that's pretty broad. Give me a little more tactically some of the examples or the projects that are behind that.
Yeah, so I mean, the one that's been amazing is Pegasus Park, and that was sort of a biotech slash nonprofit center where you get some amazing real estate people in Dallas, and they said, look, why don't we get this building? Why don't we discount some of the rent? Let's get all the nonprofits in the same four walls, and let's get a real focus on biotech in this building. And so there's no doubt where do you need to go if you're interested in nonprofits in Dallas, and where do you need to go if you're interested in biotech? So I'm not sure why those two things ended up in that for a while, but that has been a tremendous success. And Pegasus Park is really vibrant center. I'm there all the time. I mean, a lot of meetings happen there, a lot of events. That's been a tremendous success.
And maybe say a little more about Fort Worth. Cowtown is, often not the first thought, right? Dallas is kind of the first thought, but you mentioned Fort Worth is really accelerating their investment in innovation, entrepreneurship, all of that. Say a little bit more about what that means, how you're seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I told a little bit of I came out from the Bay Area, and so a lot of people call me up and they say, like, our VC is going to put something in DFW, and we're thinking about Ross Avenue, Dallas, and I'm like, yeah, that's great, but don't forget about Fort Worth. It's 35-minute drive, and there's some really interesting stuff going on there. And then you talk to them 2 years later, and they're flying off to Boston, and I'm like, what do you hate your kids? I mean, you don't want to be home for dinner? Why don't you just drive 35 minutes west to Fort Worth? And then, but I mean, this. I mean, VCs tend to aggregate. I mean, they like their antique grandfather clocks, and so they want to be around each other. And I get it. I mean, I think they do benefit a lot from aggregating. But at the same time, here the challenge for us is getting them to just come west to Fort Worth, where there's a lot of opportunity. But people get habituated, right? I mean, they're used to flying to Boston and back to Silicon Valley, and we're trying to convince them that 35-minute drive, get you home for dinner. Come on, it's not a bad deal.
It's a good pitch. It's a good pitch. Yeah, it's been exciting to see the growth and activity in Fort Worth as well. On my side, I know Cowtown Angels has grown tremendously over the years and has been a great active partner for Intan and the other groups in town. Final thoughts that you would leave with our angel investor audience? What's happening in DFW, their role, any words of wisdom, lessons learned? What would you leave our audience with?
Yeah, I don't know, words of wisdom.
You've got some words of wisdom. 20 years at GameStop, a decade in this space.
Yeah, I think, focusing on the collaboration part of it, right? It's just, we tend to think, oftentimes we deteriorate in arguments about whether it's Fort Worth based or it's Dallas based. And, I like to reset that context and say, let's look at what Austin's doing. I mean, they've done an incredible job in Austin. I mean, really tremendous. And I think some of that friendly like here for this event, we have friendly competition with Brad Feld and his folks in Denver. And it really is friendly, but we want to win. And so we get creative and we start doing something different every year, see if we can't beat Brad. I mean, that's a very American, healthy
Tell him
tradition.
you said that. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Tell him I said, yeah. But, I think that oftentimes instead of focusing like, is this going to go to Plano or is it going to go to Arlington or Fort? Let's focus on Austin. I mean, we love those guys down there, but why don't we get together as North Texas and see if we can get the same angel investment numbers in 2026 than they do in Austin? Because we don't now. I mean, we should. I mean, we certainly got more money up here than they do in Austin, but yet we're significantly behind on angel investment. So, I don't know if it's a word of wisdom, but man, let's focus on beating Austin, and it's going to make Austin better. It's going to make us better. And then maybe one day we'll team together and try and beat Boston. But right now, the infighting here, we don't need any of that.
Well, Bill, this has been an honor. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of the midst of a wild 10-year anniversary DFW Startup Week to sit down with me and speak with our audience. I look forward very much to our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Diligent Observer. I'm your host, Andrew, and if you're an angel investor looking for essential angel intel in 5 minutes every week, I think you'd enjoy my newsletter. I send my best stuff, interesting deals, and more straight to your inbox so you never miss a thing. Subscribe today at thediligentobserver.com.